The MCU has grown so much over the years that I think more focus should be on team-up films. No, I'm not saying full-on Avengers films every time, but rather more intimate two-person team-ups like Thor and Hulk and Thor Ragnarok. But with the MCU being so jam-packed with characters, just who should actually team up? What combinations would make for the weirdest yet also effective duos? Maybe Spider-Man and Yelena? Doctor Strange and Ned Leeds, Shang-Chi and Ant-Man, Agatha Harkness and Red Skull, so many options, so join me today as I break down some of the most unlikely pairings that could actually work in the MCU. Do you think Peter Parker would be intimidated by Yelena? As one of the best new characters to be introduced in Phase 4, Yelena steals practically every scene she's in thanks to her wit, her attitude, and general aloofness. Like, she'll happily joke around with you and let you know how excited she is to sightsee a new city over a pan of macaroni and cheese, but also suddenly stab you with one of the probably dozens of weapons she has hidden in her deep-pocketed outfit. She's quick with a joke or a sarcastic comment, but her years of training has left her unflappable. So that's why I think pairing her up with Spider-Man for an adventure would be a lot of fun. I mean, they're both around the same age, right? Wait, they're not? Oh, that's right, Tom Holland and Florence Pugh are a year apart in age, but then Peter Parker is only like 17, and Yelena has to be technically in her 30s now. That's weird. Anyway, I just think a team-up between these two individuals represents the very best at what an MCU team-up could be. They're literally so opposite from each other. Peter Parker is optimistic, a little naive, easily flustered, and wants to see the good in everyone. Yelena is sarcastic, no-nonsense, likes to speak the truth no matter how brutal it is, and isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Their personalities would be like oil and water, and yet if you look closely, the core of their characters are relatively similar. Yelena has spent years rescuing brainwashed Black Widows from mind control in order to help them, and Peter's whole arc in No Way Home was about him seeing the good in villains who the rest of the world had written off, and doing everything to cure them. Couldn't you imagine Yelena sticking around New York for a bit and enlisting Spider-Man's help to rescue a few brainwashed Black Widows? And don't you think Spidey wouldn't hesitate to help? Plus, for the fun of it, you could throw in Yelena's new BFF Kate Bishop into the mix and you'll have yourself a wonderful new trio of heroes. Some of the entries on this list have actually teamed up in the comics before, and I thought it would be fun to include some of these pairings to show that they have comic precedents and talk about how the MCU can adapt those. Which leads me to the baffling team-up of Deadpool and Iron Fist. Now, getting this into the MCU would be tricky. You know, since we don't really have an idea what's happening with Deadpool now that Disney owns all the Fox properties, and also since the first Iron Fist TV show was a flaming piece of hot garbage that everyone wants to forget about. But honestly, I think Iron Fist's total belly flop actually makes a team-up between the Merc with a Mouth and the Living Weapon more plausible. I know the MCU would never go this route, but picture a scenario where Deadpool learns about the multiverse and tries desperately to cross over to the main universe so that he can be in more movies, but then accidentally finds himself in the Netflix universe of Marvel heroes. Then, knowing he now needs help, he turns to Iron Fist because Iron Fist is the only other hero who would be motivated to cross over universes in order to get another chance. That allows Iron Fist to get a bit of redemption as it hangs a lampshade on his disastrous TV show, and it pairs Deadpool up with a fighter with a fascinating skill set. And come on, being around Iron Fist, it means having to face ninjas and other martial artists. And don't you want to see Deadpool in that kind of scenario? I do. Before Spider-Man No Way Home, if you told me that Doctor Strange and Ned Leeds should be a team, then I would have thought you've been taking too much goblin serum. What could Ned Leeds, the self-proclaimed man in the chair, have in common with the Sorcerer Supreme? At first, it seemed like nothing, but then, of course, the whole crazy plot of No Way Home took place. Amidst all the multiverse shenanigans, we found out that Ned's throwaway line about having magic in his family actually seemed to be true, as Ned was able to use the sling ring to open portals. Remember how that took Stephen Strange like a quarter of a movie to get right? And that's with non-stop training. Ned was able to do it almost by accident. Or, you know, maybe he was like all of us and deep down wanted to see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire again in their Spidey costumes, so that portal opening came easy to him. Anyway, Ned is officially magic now. And yes, they could drop that plot thread and never mention it again, or they could go somewhere with it. Doctor Strange seemed fascinated by the idea that Ned was able to open portals and seemed to make a mental note of that for later. So it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility that Strange would seek out Ned down the line in order to train him. I think that creates a fun parallel, as Peter Parker was mentored by Iron Man, and now Ned can be mentored by Doctor Strange. But would Strange be a good mentor? He seems like the type of guy who would just make you do chores all day under the guise of training, so I guess Ned better be careful. The best thing about a team-up is when you have two characters who not only are vastly different in terms of powers and abilities, but also ideals. It creates a fun viewing experience to see different ideologies clash with each other. It's what made Tony Stark and Steve Rogers' beef so much fun to watch. In that regard, I think it would be a hoot to see Sam Wilson have to team up with Loki, because the two really couldn't be more different. But I also think the two of them could learn a lot from each other. Sam is just starting out in his new role as Captain America, and I think that means he should start dealing with more powerful individuals. If he's really going to step into Captain America's shoes, it means being involved in bigger world-ending threats, and those are kind of Loki's specialty. I think teaming up with Loki would give Sam a real personal challenge, as he has to learn what he brings to the table when it comes to dealing with all-powerful Asgardians. And then on the flip side, Loki can learn a lot from Sam. Loki's character arc has him back on the hero's journey, where he continues to become more and more of a good guy, so the next step would be to pair him up with one of the ultimate symbols for good. Sam can teach Loki what it means to do what's right and provide Loki a new perspective toward the whole hero game. And hey, if this eventually leads to Loki joining the Avengers, so be it. I also want to throw in some villains on this list, because as much fun as it is to see heroes work together, I would argue it's even better watching villains team up. Maybe it's because on the hero side, you know that the two are going to work it out and save the day together while walking away as pretty much friends. But when villains team up, literally anything can happen. They can be working together great one moment, but then quickly backstab each other the next. When things like greed, ambition, and a quest for more power clash, these team-ups can be unpredictable. So with all that said, I think a fun pairing could be Agatha Harkness and Red Skull. Red Skull is a villain who never reached his full potential in the MCU, and Agatha is one of the best new villains we've seen in Phase 4. What would bring these two together? Well, remember that the Russo brothers said after the Soul Stone is taken, Red Skull is essentially freed from his torture. So now he's this ghostly spirit who probably wants his body back, so where would you turn? How about a powerful sorceress who could potentially use magic to resurrect you? Sounds cool, right? Red Skull's spirit could be the one to awaken Agatha from her horrible mind prison she found herself in at the end of WandaVision, and Agatha could repay Red Skull by putting his spirit back in a new body. That's a win-win, right? Alright, let's start the petition right now to make Howard the Duck the new face of the MCU. Oh, no one wants that? But hey, think about it. Howard could be the whole key to the multiverse. Let's not forget originally that Howard came from a different universe's planet called, you guessed it, Duck World. And if they keep that backstory in the MCU with the Howard that's already there, then that means Howard the Duck was one of the first characters to jump through the multiverse and could provide valuable information against the incoming Kang the Conqueror. Still no? How about we just team him up with Spider-Man then? This is another one of those team-ups that have a comic precedence, as Spidey and Howard have fought together from time to time. Their personalities sorta mesh, with Spidey always being amazed at the wacky adventures he gets drawn into, and Howard being the king of wacky adventures. Maybe now that Spider-Man is on his own in the MCU, he could come across stranger characters like Howard the Duck, and the two could stop other multiversal threats. I'm just saying that would be delightful. The only thing that Shang-Chi and Ant-Man really have in common is that they're both based in San Francisco. Like, obviously I know the timeline just doesn't work out, but how funny would it have been if during that fantastic bus fight scene in Shang-Chi, we catch a quick glimpse of Ant-Man in his giant man mode during his big car chase in Ant-Man and the Wasp, like, happening simultaneously. I just like that Scott Lang and Shang-Chi are in the same city but dealing with vastly different things. Ant-Man is obviously more science-y, quantum realm stuff, and Shang-Chi is more mystical and magical. So if the two heroes had to join forces for a mission, would they be able to work together? Or would their fighting styles and approaches to problems be too much? Either way, I love the idea of putting Scott, who just now seems to be getting a handle on the science side of being a superhero, suddenly having to deal with magic. Rocket Raccoon and the Hulk have technically crossed paths before and worked together into Endgame, but let's be honest, that wasn't really the Hulk. That was Banner in Hulk's body. What I want to see is Rocket team up with the savage, angry, normal version of the Hulk. Rocket already has experience talking and working with strong, seemingly mindless brutes thanks to Groot, so I want to see that skill set carried over in a Hulk team-up. And this is another one that has comic precedent, as Rocket Raccoon, the character, was actually fully introduced and fleshed out in a Hulk comic. Hulk has proven to be a valuable member of any team-up, and putting him with the mischievous yet brilliant Rocket, who knows what trouble the two could get up to. Going forward, it will be fascinating to see what the MCU does with the Eternals. The movie didn't make as big of a splash as Disney probably wanted, so the question becomes, what happens to the Eternals now? Well, one suggestion is integrating them with more well-known characters in the MCU in order to flesh them out a bit better. Like, I could see a future team-up between Phastos and the new Vision. When we last left Vision, he was all white and just was embedded with all of his original memories before being overwhelmed and flying off to parts unknown. There's no way his story is done, but who would be the best character to help him overcome these new complicated emotions? Well, clearly it's Phastos. The dude is a genius and I think uses all those spinning gear things to make complicated technology and machines, or something. Anyway, this is a matchup you'd never think about, but given their skill sets and where their heads are at currently, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, another villain team-up. This time, it's one of the most well-received MCU villains ever with one of the worst. That's right, I'm talking about Kingpin and Justin Hammer. Now that Kingpin is officially in our main universe, it's going to be a treat watching him rule the criminal underworld in New York. Like, even Hawkeye was afraid of him, and Hawkeye has literally fought aliens. And knowing Kingpin, I wouldn't be surprised if he's developed numerous connections with other wealthy, powerful people in order to equip his crime syndicates, and that's where Justin Hammer comes in. Justin Hammer was originally presented as an evil Tony Stark, but Iron Man 2 was such a disappointment that they haven't been able to do anything else with the character. Bringing Hammer back now to partner with Kingpin would create a powerful evil duo. Like Hammer's wealth and sorta tech expertise paired with Kingpin's ruthlessness and general threatening demeanor, yeah, they'd make a great team. So yeah, I'm really suggesting anything to get Sam Rockwell back into the MCU. If you want to talk about unlikely pairings, then one of the best examples is Mantis and Swordsman. These two actually have a pretty entwined backstory in the comics, with Mantis helping Swordsman regain his confidence and the two trying to join the Avengers together. They have a complicated comic history, but because Guardians of the Galaxy 2 completely reworked Mantis' origins, it doesn't look like the two will team up anytime soon. But never say never. Hawkeye left Swordsman's future open-ended, and maybe he could stumble onto a spaceship and fly up to team up with Mantis? Okay, this one sounds a little too unlikely, but I just want more Mantis and Swordsman, okay? Katy from Shang-Chi really stepped up when necessary. She wasn't just your normal comedic sidekick, but rather helped save the day a few times in The Legend of the Ten Rings. By the end, after only being an archer for like a week, she was invited along with Shang-Chi to basically join the Avengers. And if Katy is really going to stick around and learn more archery, then she needs a good teacher. That's where Kate Bishop could come into play. I always like the idea of after being mentored by someone, a superhero can turn around and mentor someone else, so it would be cool to see Kate Bishop move into the Hawkeye role fully as she teaches Katy some cool archery tricks. Plus, these two are two of the funniest new characters in Phase 4, so putting them on an adventure together would be an absolute blast. How crazy would it be if it's revealed that the Fantastic Four actually exist not in the MCU but in the Sonyverse instead? I think all of our heads would collectively explode. And while that's not going to happen, that does mean we're missing out on that sweet, sweet Morbius and the Thing team-up. I know, everyone wants to see that. Wait, what? No one wants to see that? You in the back over there, you don't want to see that? Nobody? What if I told you that in the comics, Morbius and the Thing teamed up to take on an alien from Dimension Z that could erase people from reality? Any interest? Fine, I guess not. Moving on. Thor has had a complete character revitalization thanks to Thor Ragnarok, and now I want all of his movies to be buddy team-up films where he partners with new people each time. He's already become best friends with the Hulk and Bruce Banner, so who's next on the team-up list? Honestly, instead of a hero, I would love to see Thor team up with an average human being and see how they react to all the crazy stuff Thor has to go through in the galaxy. So yes, I'm obviously writing Taika Waititi letters every day to try to get him to put Happy Hogan in a Thor movie. Imagine the bright, colorful, retro, and far-out world that Taika creates in his Thor movies, seen through the eyes of Happy Hogan. Yes, Happy is actually great in a crisis, but his grumpy attitude when things don't go his way would be a hilarious counterpoint to Thor and all his wild shenanigans. Hey, this list was all about unlikely pairings, right? Can you think of two people more unlikely to meet up and save the day than Thor and Happy Hogan? No, I don't think so. Last on this list is one final villain team-up. The last we saw Yellowjacket, he was getting sucked into the quantum realm, but Ant-Man and the Wasp showed us that just because you get trapped there doesn't mean you automatically perish. Janet survived there for years, so there's no reason to think Darren Cross is gone forever. But how exactly could he escape? Well, we know Kang the Conqueror is in the third Ant-Man movie, which suggests that the quantum realm not only holds the secret to time travel, but also multiversal travel. What if Kang somehow uses the quantum realm and rescues Yellowjacket in order for the villain to become his new henchman sidekick? That would be an awesome bit of continuity and connective tissue to the first movie, while giving Yellowjacket a bit more screen time after being a little underdeveloped in the original. You think it's at all possible to have old man Steve Rogers meet up with old man Logan once the multiverse kicks into high gear? You don't even have to have a superhero movie, just put both of them in a retirement home together and see what sort of crazy shenanigans ensue. Hey, anything can happen thanks to the multiverse, right?